joining us for Making It Work. The topic this afternoon is focused on internships. I'm Courtney Spencer, Vice President of Advertising for the Portland Press Herald. Today, our business projects editor, Carol Coultas, will be moderating the panel discussion on the importance of internships and how to create an internship program. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to thank our generous sponsors for their support. Because of them, this programming is possible. Thank you to Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, MEMIC, Cross Insurance, and Katahdin Trust Company. We hope you enjoy today's discussion.
Thank you, Courtney. Welcome, everyone. So in the 8 or so years that I've been organizing business-to-business events for the Press Herald, this is the first time that I actually could be a panelist in my own event. I have been operating and overseeing the intern program at the Press Herald for the last 4 or 5 years, and it's been a wonderful experience. And because of that, I've been watching as the popularity of intern programs has been growing, not only here in Maine, but across the country. And it's interesting because the interns really fill a need for businesses and often become a pipeline for new hires. And for students, it gives them really terrific hands-on experience in the work world. So it's really not that surprising, I think, that internships have really gained in popularity. And I noticed that last month, Focus Maine and Educate Maine, who have been collaborating for the last several years on sort of providing a matchmaking service between college students looking for internships and businesses that want to hire them or bring them on, have now they've just rebranded that whole operation into its own program, and it's called Maine Career Compass. And so over the last couple of years, they've been able to match 2,000 interns with about 80 Maine companies. And they're expanding now to include co-ops and apprenticeships and some other ways for students to get this kind of hands-on experience. So this is about the time of year that students are looking to lock down summer internships, which is why we thought this would be a good time to look at this issue. And I'm really very delighted that we've got 3 people from the trenches, so to speak, who are here to share their expertise and their insight on this. Let me introduce our panelists. First is Kaylyn O'Brien. She is a manager for the Strategic Talent Programs and Partnerships at WEX. And as you know, WEX is one of the biggest and most important companies here in Maine. Kaylyn has been working on an array of projects across the human resource network for WEX, and she oversees key external partnerships that are positioned to support the talent pipeline and long-term employee development for WEX. Before coming here to Maine, she worked in higher education as a leadership educator at Hobart William Smith Colleges in upstate New York. And right now, she's pursuing a doctorate degree through Vanderbilt. As part of her research, she has partnered with Live and Work in Maine to examine the transition experience of individuals who have chosen to relocate to Maine. So she's got a wealth of information and that she's going to be able to share with us today. So thank you and welcome, Kaylyn. We also have Lillian Lima. So Lillian is a first-generation American. Her family hails from Ecuador, and she received a bachelor's degree from the University of Southern Maine in Communications and Media Studies. Last summer, she interned for Hannaford, for the supermarket chain, in their internal communications department, and she was focusing on diversity and inclusion projects. As part of her internship, she interviewed and then wrote profiles of employees who had won their Department Manager of the Year awards for a large internal publication for Hannaford. And from that experience, she gained great organizational skills, confidence in her work, how to handle deadline pressure, and how to be flexible during a pandemic, which is something I think all of us have had to learn in one way or another. And Lillian was able to parlay that experience into a news editor job at WGME CBS 13 here in Portland. So welcome to you too, Lillian. And then our final panelist is someone who probably many of you in the audience already recognize. Jeanne Paquette is the Vice President of Workforce Engagement at USM. That's the arm of the university that oversees career management. And she had noticed about 2 years ago that that program really needed to be amped up. She has been directing a lot of resources to that and really expanding what USM is able to offer in terms of workplace experience for their students. But before that, and this is where you may recognize her, she was the Commissioner of Labor, the Maine State Commissioner of Labor from 2012 to 2017. So welcome to you all. I'm delighted you're here and can share your expertise and insight with us. And let me get the ball rolling with you first, Jeanne. And I'm wondering if you can talk about sort of if you're talking to a small or medium-sized business owner, they're interested in launching an intern program. What are the first steps? Can you talk a little bit about the things that maybe a business that isn't big enough to have its own HR department would need to know? And then conversely, Kaylyn, can you talk about WEX's history with internships? Because I think it would be interesting to have the sort of the smaller and medium-sized business experience and then have the larger corporate experience. So Jeanne, if you wouldn't mind addressing that first.
Thank you so much, Carol. And it's so nice to be here on this panel today. And I will tell you that internships is near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. And one of the things when I started at USM and started working with our career services folks is that we really want to offer these opportunities to small and medium-sized companies. So when we first really started to dig in how to demystify how to start an internship, there's some things to consider as a business. It's not just as easy of, let me just start an internship, let's bring someone in and see, what fits. It really needs to be thought out. And what we have found is that if a business can contact our group at the Career and Employment Hub at USM, we can actually walk them through the steps. And we have also created an employer's guide on how to design and implement an internship program. And I think there's a link that we can share later on, but I just wanted to tell you a couple things that people have to consider. And that is things like, what time of year? Is it project-based? Who will supervise the intern? Will it be a paid internship? Will they receive credit? Do we need to connect you with our faculty to see about designing something that would fit the business needs, but also fit our students' needs? So that's really the things that we want people to think about, but we're here to help you kind of walk through those things if you're interested, which a lot of companies are right now.
And you have that resource guide is available to anyone?
Yes, it's online.
Okay.
Yes, it is. It's designing and implementing, and it's got detailed information. But if people want to just talk to one of our career advisors or one of our employer relationship managers, any one of our team, they're fantastic. And we would be happy to take your calls. Here you go. Here's the information right there. Phone number is at the bottom. You can email us and we can get you connected.
Wow, that's terrific. That's terrific. Thank you. And Kaylyn, how about you? Can you talk a little about how WEX has handled its intern program?
Yeah, sure. So I think that one of the things, and Jeanne kind of hit some of the nails on the head, so I might just reiterate it from the industry side of things. But WEX has had an internship program for a number of years, but in the last 5 years, we've gotten much more strategic and intentional about it. And so in the past, it was somewhat organic, right? Interns or college students would come to us looking for opportunities if there was the ability for us to offer them an experience in-house that could help them learn, in the career field that they're interested in, then great, we would be able to structure that and someone in HR would kind of guide the facilitation of the experience. And then in the last 5 years, we've actually developed it so it's this full-blown strategic talent program. And I think that it's that transition from asking yourself as a business, what's the purpose of offering internships? What are we actually trying to achieve here? And so for us at WEX, it's a key component of our talent pipeline. And so that means that we're positioned to invest resources and time in our staff in creating an experience for these students. We build partnerships with colleges and universities so that we can have the forward-thinking conversations about what kind of internship experience are your students looking for? Where are they going? What are they hoping to learn? How can we help translate what they've learned in the classroom and on your campus into what they'll learn once they join us in the business? And so I think that strategic component is really a way to shift your thinking when you're in the industry about what do we actually want to do with these interns? And so for us, the program now is a huge feeder, right? We have a number of interns every year who are able to convert from, they join us for an internship, whether that's over the summer months or as a co-op while they're doing their schoolwork. And then a full-time role comes available and we're able to funnel them into those full-time roles. And so I think having that intentionality behind it and resourcing it and understanding what the long-term purpose is for us as a company has been a really huge transition from what we used to offer to what we offer now.
Oh, interesting. I'm curious, have you done any analysis to know, like, of the people that you've hired, maybe here just within the state of Maine, not at your other locations, but of your new hires, do you know what % had an internship with WEX?
Sure, yeah. So I have tons of fun stories about that. I think the first and foremost is that my colleague who actually runs our internship program started at WEX as an intern a number of years ago.
Oh, wow.
And now she's in a position where she actually manages the program, the whole entire life cycle. So that's a great success story. There's former WEX interns across the whole company, 2020 separate from 2020, obviously, because things were a little different over the last year, but our conversion rate for interns sits somewhere close to 80%.
Wow.
So they're positioned as that pipeline. So I think if you meet a WEXer and you ask them, hey, do you know a former intern who works for WEX now? They'll be able to rattle off a handful of names. And I think just to kind of build on that, actually, one of the key transition moments for us in the evolution of our program was being able to, within human resources, being able to go out to the business and have them put in the requests for interns the same way they would put in the request for a full-time role. And it really got folks thinking about, okay, what do we want this intern to do once they join our team? What is the long-term hope for them? Do we have a role for them full-time in the future? So just that kind of shift in thinking, I also think plays a big difference.
Oh, interesting. So let's talk about what are the benefits both to the company and to the intern, and conversely then, what are the challenges? And Lillian, why don't you get the ball rolling on this conversation? You're a freshly minted intern who has now landed her first job after college. And so can you talk a little bit about what you found as being the most beneficial part of interning, and what you found to be the most challenging?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the most rewarding part of like having an internship and going through that whole process is the work that you accomplish at the end. Like, so for myself, during Hannaford, I knew I was going to be writing profile pieces from the beginning of the internship, but the final product really made me feel like, wow, I'm like a writer published. I mean, it might not be a national publication, but it still feels like I've accomplished something, And again, the great thing, and it also depends like who's running the program, the team you're with. I enjoyed working with the team that I was with, and our supervisors were super supportive. Everyone that we interacted with at the company was super nice and encouraging. And that's the thing too, as an intern, you get to ask all these questions, and everyone kind of is willing to like answer the questions for you. And they're more than welcoming to like, let you know X, Y, and Z of the company, or more, or maybe other fields that you might be interested within your studies, which is great, which is what I was doing towards the end of my internship. I was able to connect with people in marketing, in community help, community outreach, because those were things that were interesting to me as well. And yeah.
So for the benefits, it was the exposure to a wide variety of opportunities where you could sort of test the waters and see if you know, you could take something out of the communications department, you could take something out of the marketing department. And at the end, you were able to produce something that was published and shared company-wide. What did you find as to be really challenging? And given the fact that you were doing this during a pandemic, maybe that's your answer, I don't know. So what was the most challenging part?
Well, so hearing from, there was a couple interns who returned this year, and they had stories where, you know, they were able to go into into like the main office building and do all these fun activities. And so I guess the hardest part, or like one of the challenges, was that we didn't get to spend as much one-on-one time with the other interns. You know, yes, every day we did have like a Zoom meeting or Teams meeting. And, you know, but there's just only so much you can do throughout the technology that we have, where that human connection was kind of missing, unfortunately. And, you know, we weren't able to bond more than what you hear from the previous years, you know, like all the activities that you could do, like get to know one another, continue networking. And so that was unfortunate, but they did the best that they could do. We did virtual like scavenger hunts and stuff, which was great. And yeah, I think that would be one of the difficult things. And also I think maybe like realizing, oh, maybe this is not something I want to actually do, or opening your eyes to like, oh, this sounds interesting as well. So, you know, getting your feet wet definitely helps in like, so you don't waste time in the future and what maybe would have taken you a couple of years to figure out that you might have been interested in doing, but like this helps figure out that, oh, no, this is exactly what I want to do. So,
well, good. That's great. And Jeanne and Kaylyn, so talk about it from the business perspective. What are the top benefits and what are the top challenges?
Well, I would say that having the talent pipeline is probably the most obvious one. And, you know, I think that employers really want to see if there's a good fit for that student. And, you know, we also think that when you have an internship program, or if you bring in interns, it's fresh eyes. Right. It's fresh eyes to kind of take a look at your business. And it's really rewarding for both the intern and the business, because the intern feels engaged when they're asked about their opinion about something. And we also think that your business can show them what is available here in Maine. And that's also really important too. There's many businesses that students don't really even know are out there. And so I think the benefits for the business is that they are able to engage with different programs. And I do want to say that we work with the Maine Campus Connection. We work with all kinds of different organizations, because to me, it's everyone's job to help connect businesses with our students and with our workforce. And so I think that the benefits are to also you get to brand your business on our campus so that students can also see what it is that you offer out there. So I think that's a big benefit to the business community.
And what about the challenges?
Well, the challenges are, I have seen that the challenges is that it's a time commitment. It's a commitment to making sure that there are goals. We recommend that before you start an internship and actually get it off the ground, that you figure out with the intern, what are the learning goals, 3 or 4 goals. What does the student want to get out of that? And then managing that. And that's actually great professional development for the person supervising the intern too. So, but it is a challenge. Sometimes the manpower at the business is tough to take along, because it's not something that's just an afterthought. It has to be intentional, like Kaylyn had mentioned.
Right. And Kaylyn, what's WEX's perspective on this?
Yeah, so I would echo a lot of what's been shared so far, but in an effort to put forward maybe two additional things, I think from a benefit side, we just find that, and I guess Jeanne, you kind of touched on this, but the influx of fresh perspective is just so beneficial. And we used to, when we were able to go on campuses and recruit and engage with colleges, we used to bring this kiosk with us that had this big question on it, and it said, "Do you think there's a better way? So do we." And it was a tagline, and it really matches our company culture, but it almost invited interns to come to our table at the career fair and say, "Does that mean I get to like actually pitch my ideas?" And we would say yes. And they would sometimes look at you like, "You want my ideas?" And we're like, "We do," right? And so when they would come onto the teams that they were hired onto, there are plenty of stories of WEX interns who have looked at something that we've always done a particular way, and they've just asked a question like, "Well, have you tried this?" or "Have you thought of this?" And then we give them the resources to run with that idea. And now all of a sudden we're using the system or the process or the idea that they brought to the table. And so I think just that fresh perspective, especially when you're bringing in people who don't know your business yet, they're going to look at it in a way that's going to be totally different because they're not as familiar or they're not as entrenched in it. And that's a huge value add. From a challenge perspective, I think I would probably just elaborate on the idea of the time that it really takes and the intentionality. And I think it's a question of asking yourself, what kind of experience do you want to provide, right? Are you looking to just bring talent in, have them do whatever it is that you need them to do, and then move them on their way? That's a valuable program, right? But that's very different than one that might be a strategic talent program that you're looking to kind of create that pipeline where you're consistently bringing folks in, and the way that you resource those looks really different. And then to Jeanne's point, the way that you prepare the people who are going to be interacting with the intern, right? That's a whole other layer onto this, because we want to make sure our WEXers are prepared to support the interns that are joining their teams, and that takes resources and time too.
Yeah, and actually that goes right into the next question I had, and that is, how do you assess if you're ready to do that, if you're ready to host an intern? Because for unpaid interns, they have to receive academic credit in order to comply with our labor laws in this state. And if someone's receiving credit for the time they spend with you, there has to be value to that. You can't just have them, do a bunch of tedious chores and call it good at the end of the day. There needs to be an enriching experience for the intern as well. So is the recommendation for businesses that are considering this, do you approach it with the idea that we have a particular project in mind, or we really could, we don't do anything from a marketing perspective, and if we could get a marketing intern, maybe we could get an upgraded website and a campaign, and like, how would you recommend a business approach developing or launching an internship that goes to what you were saying too, Jeanne, about you need to be thoughtful about your approach?
Well, I think.
Go for it, Jeanne.
Go ahead, Kaylyn. That's all right, Kaylyn. Go ahead. That's fine.
I was just going to say, I think there's kind of two questions you can ask yourself. So the first is, what experience are we equipped to provide? And so once you start to like chip away at that question, I think you're able to start to discern, okay, is this something where we know we have this big ticket project, we need extra hands on it? An intern would be great. They could get a good experience, they could learn something, and we could benefit from just having, extra hands on the project. And that might be the kind of experience you want to provide. Or it might be something where you want to do, or your resource to do something similar to what we do, where yes, sure, the interns are on teams and they're doing work, it's a full-time job for the summer months, but then there's this whole wraparound experience that they get, where when we used to be able to do this, we would take them to Cow Island for their orientation, we would get them out across the state so that they could learn about Maine, we would do networking sessions, professional development, partner with Focus Maine. Both of those types of experiences are equally valuable for both the intern and the business, but they're two very different things. So asking yourself which one you want to provide. But then I think the second approach that you can take is the same approach you take when you decide to bring on a new hire, a full-time hire, right? What needs to be done? Who are you looking for? What skill set do you want to add to your team? And if an intern fits that bill, then you can build an experience around that particular role. And so we like to talk to our business and we say, the same thought process you do to add a new headcount is the same thought process we want you to do to add a new intern role.
Wow, great.
And in this market, we also want to stay very flexible and creative. So one of the things that we're working on developing and pushing out are things called micro internships. And that might be something that is maybe 6 weeks. It could be over the winter break. We hope that it would be a paid internship, but it's usually project-based, and it helps the student to stay connected to their university or to their college during that period of time. But it also allows it allows for a shorter period of time to test out whether or not that person might be a fit for the future in hiring. So micro internships is one way of staying, being creative. Many of our students have to work and they can't do necessarily an unpaid internship. So I think as we move forward, we really need to think outside the box on how we can do that better. We would love to do that more at USM. One of our priorities is to have, experiential learning and connecting our learning with work. And so our team does help to connect with our faculty to see how we can do it for credit, but we are open to, having credit and being paid if that's possible too. Some businesses can't necessarily pay for an intern, but I think we can get creative in figuring out how we can make a match, because the internships are so critical because it gives so much to the student in order for them to get ready to go into the workforce. I always like to say your degree is not your destination. So the more experiences you can get out there in the work world, the more prepared you are and the better equipped you can compete with the other candidates out there, especially in any type of job market that's going on.
Are you aware, Jeanne, of resources that, whether it's private foundation money or other resources where money is put up so that businesses that can't afford to pay interns could find, could access that money and pay their intern? Like, are there outside sources for that?
There are. It's not as large and as expansive as I would like to see it, but we do have the Maine Economic Innovation Fund, which is specifically towards the sectors around STEM and so forth. And Michelle Drucker, one of our folks at the Employment Hub, she oversees this program, and it is a paid internship. And we allow companies to apply to be host sites, and then we allow the students to apply, and it's a matching of what the student is looking for and what the business is looking for. And then it follows the student all the way through the whole internship process. It's a wonderful program. We would just like to have more resources that we could pay the intern while they do that kind of work.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that some of the bigger companies will pay interns the equivalent of what an entry-level employee would make. And then other businesses are just able to pay minimum wage, so they're able to pay something, and then others aren't able to pay anything at all. So I think there's probably some sort of a tier program, a tier effect going on there. Lillian, for you, would you have been able to take the Hannaford internship if you hadn't been paid? Like, it was a paid internship for you. Would it have been viable for you if it was unpaid?
So it was a full-time internship, and if it would have not been paid, I probably most likely would have not been able to do that internship, just because I have to work to support myself, and it was full-time, and to just work 1 day or 2 days out of the week just to try to make ends meet would have been pretty stressful, especially during the pandemic. It would have been very difficult. And so I'm glad they did pay, because that was very, fortunate for my case. But I think another thing that, we mentioned earlier was that interns bring a different perspective or to a company, correct? And during these times, we're concentrating on diversity, inclusion, and equity. I think there's definitely like an unequal balance of the students who are able to do unpaid internships versus others who are, because of their economical privileges. And most of the time it is students of color who can't do the unpaid internships. And then that affects, when they graduate college, the experience part that many employers are looking for. So it puts them like behind a little bit. And again, with a paid internship, it brings more diversity to the company, more perspectives to the business, and other insights that maybe just one group of people, have in common and stuff. So I think that's also another important perspective to look at, the importance of why we should pay our interns. We do go, I mean, at least for myself, I go excited to like learn something new and within the company and contribute to something that hopefully might last. If not, then oh well, but I get excited, and to be able to be compensated for that feels great as well. It's one less thing I have to worry about. I did do once an unpaid internship. It was part-time, and it was about 20 hours. And on top of that, I had to also work my at my other part-time job, like my full part-time hours, which is about 30. So that was like 50 hours there that week, plus classes, and in the summertime. And I look back at it, and yeah, the internship was great. I learned stuff, but if it would have been paid, that would have helped with my stress load, my mental health, and so I think any type of financial support from a company or a third way, company would be great and beneficial for the students, especially those of color.
Yeah, those are all really good points, Lillian. Thank you. I think that part of the reason internships have really sort of gained in popularity, at least here in Maine over the last few years, is that Maine has been facing, or up until the pandemic anyway, Maine was really facing a pretty severe labor crunch. And I think a lot of companies were looking at internships as a way to really as a recruitment tool. And I'm wondering if there are, if you have a consensus that that's pretty much what was going on. But also, are there other corporate goals that internships can help achieve? I'm just curious if you're seeing an expansion of internships for that role. And Kaylyn, why don't you tackle that question first?
Yeah. So I think I would actually kind of build off of some of what Lillian was giving voice to. So one of the things that we know, and I kind of already spoke to this, right? Our internship is positioned as a key lever within our talent pipeline. And we want to make sure that that talent pipeline is accessible to students coming from a wide range of backgrounds. And so for us on the internship programming side, it was important. Our internships have always been paid, but what we wanted to do is we wanted to look at all of the other components of the experience and remove as many barriers as we could. And so a great example of that is housing, right? We knew that we wanted, when we could do this, right, bring the interns on site, bring them into the states that our different offices are a part of. Well, it's one thing to do that and ask someone to take on rent or to find housing. It's another thing to say, hey, we want you to work on site, we want you to come experience Maine, and we're going to cover the cost of your housing. You just need to get out. Right. And even in that respect, after we had done that for a year or so, we looked and we said, okay, are there other barriers here that we could remove? We end up with a large number of international students who end up joining us as interns over the course of the summer months. They might not have cars here in the States. So can we help them get from the airport to Maine so they can get to their housing? And so I think on the employer side, it's just a matter of asking yourself, how can we remove as many barriers as we're positioned to remove, so that if we're positioning this internship program to be a part of our talent pipeline, it's supporting our diversity and inclusion goals as well. And I think that barrier removal lens, sure, compensation is a huge part of that. And Lillian gave voice to that really well. And so there's so much more though, right? And so if you fix the compensation challenge, now you need to continue to ask yourself, how do we remove barriers? And then I think the other thing from a corporate goals standpoint, right, is that we, at least for the interns that are based in Maine, we want them to get to know the state, right? If they're going to consider a full-time opportunity with us, they need to know and be able to learn about this place that they might eventually call home. And so from a recruiting standpoint, it's not just trying to recruit them into WEX and seeing if they're a good fit for us and if we're a good fit for them, but it's this sense of place and those connections to Maine that are also important to provide.
Wow, I'm still stuck on you provide housing for your interns. That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's a wonderful gift.
Yeah.
That's just astonishing. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Well, and I think, just sorry to jump in with one.
No, go ahead.
One of the things that I think is so great about the Maine network, and just looking at like different things that are popping up in the chat here, is that there are really creative ways that we can go about doing that. So obviously WEX is a large employer, so we have a little more resources to draw from to cover housing, but we partner with USM to provide that housing, right? And so looking across this ecosystem of folks who are invested in workforce development, how can we partner together to work towards reducing those barriers collectively versus just putting the onus on individual businesses or individual colleges or individual interns? So I think that collective approach is huge too.
Well, that's great. Great. Do you want to chime in, Jeanne?
Kaylyn did fantastic, but I'll just add a couple of thoughts, and that is, you know, with the pandemic, the world of work has also kind of gone on its ear. And I think that it has opened up, you know, remote internships. And so can you recruit from a wide variety of areas throughout the whole country, throughout the whole world, if you've got remote opportunities for interns, and vice versa. Our interns can, if they're, you know, wanting to do remote internships, there are lots of organizations and companies out there that may have those kinds of opportunities. Now, that being said, I will have to give a little plug. USM does work with companies like WEX because we do have housing out on our Gorham campus. But the exciting thing is that in 2023, we're going to be having a new residence hall that's going to have 580 beds right there on Forest Avenue, along with our Career and Student Success Center. And I think that's going to add a whole new dynamic because housing is such a struggle for a lot of people in the Portland area. And I think we're going to be able to see connections between internship programs and living right in Portland. And, you know, hopefully we'll be back face to face sooner rather than later. But in the meantime, it does open up other opportunities in the remote world as well.
So if I understand what you're saying, Jeanne, I just want to make, so for instance, once that new residence hall is built, is it potentially possible for USM interns to spend the summer in the residence hall while they're doing an internship with a local company? Is that what you mean in terms of enhancing that experience?
Yes, we're looking at all kinds of different models for that residence hall. And I think it's going to create a 24/7, 12-month a year type of very dynamic activities, combining our internships with our academic programming and camps and all kinds of different opportunities right there in Portland.
Wow, that's great. That's great. Well, I see we have 10 questions lined up in the queue. So I think we probably should switch gears and start taking some of those questions. Strawberry, could you line up the first question, please?
You got it. This is a question for Lillian. As a Hannaford intern, what was your experience like with Maine Career Compass? How did that benefit your learning throughout the summer?
So my experience with well, they used to be called Focus Maine, right? It was great. I felt very supported, especially during this time where everything was virtual. They offered so many great seminars in regards to things that are important as a graduate would enter the real world, such as financial concerns, building credit, and having similar panel discussions as these in regards to different career fields and whatnot. So my experience with them was great, and I've heard that if it in previous years, the activities that are conducted through them are just great. And again, with networking and getting to know all the interns within the state. So I was a little jealous that I wasn't able to experience that before this pandemic, but either way, it was great.
And I just for the audience's benefit, you can get more information at mainecareercompass.org. They've got a new website with a lot of information for companies that are and students interested in making that kind of match. How about the next question?
Do the panelists have ideas for small businesses that might only have a capacity for one intern to create a sense of community or camaraderie for their interns? Are there opportunities for intern to intern networking that can be facilitated? It seems like this would be an important part of the experience.
Yeah, Jeanne.
Absolutely. I think that one of the great parts about getting involved with organizations like Live and Work in Maine, you know, a lot of the things that are offered for other interns, they're out there all the time. I'm getting invitations all the time for different types of social events and things like that. But if you're a small company and you want to start an internship program and you're not quite sure how to actually do that and you only have room for just one, I would then say, please call our folks at the Career and Employment Hub to talk about the logistical pieces, the technical pieces, and then they, as a group, they also are very connected with networking and helping to our students and interns to connect with people that are also doing internships and so forth. So we do connect with all those different organizations.
Next question, please.
Is it true, Carol, you mentioned that you can't have an unpaid intern unless they are receiving college credit? They can't just choose to have an internship to get experience after they've graduated before they get a full-time job?
Is the question, is that legal?
Yes, it sounds like, yeah. Is that true? Is that allowed?
So my understanding, and we can toss this to the labor commissioner, but my understanding is no, you need to either be paid or you need to be earning credit. If in the absence of that, you're basically, you know, you're basically an indentured servant. So we frown upon that in the world today. So that's my understanding, is either you get academic credit, or some colleges will provide fellowships. And if a student wins a fellowship, it's the college that will pay for their internship, or you pay them outright. But yeah, I always feel bad. We get, I get at least a couple of emails a year from people who say, I just wanted the experience of working at a newspaper. You don't have to pay me. It's, you know, I just want to be able to be in that environment. And I always have to say, I'm really sorry, but that's impossible. You have to either earn academic credit or be paid for an internship. And I don't, Jeanne, is that right? Am I advising people correctly?
Well, nonprofits are, yes, for the Portland Press, that would be true. But nonprofits do not have to pay interns. But we really do want at least academic credit, or try to find a third party to help invest, because it is difficult. And I know that the experience is really important for students, but it also has to be you have to be very careful that you don't cross the line as far as labor goes.
Right, right, yep. Next question, please, Strawberry.
Is a remote Maine internship an option if our company is headquartered in another state but requires a footprint in Maine?
Can you repeat the question again?
Sure. Is a remote Maine internship an option if our company is headquartered in another state but requires a footprint in Maine?
I would say that definitely would be fine. I don't see a problem with that. But again, if you wanted to contact us in the Career and Employment Hub, we'd be able to drill down on that, get some more information about the specifics. But it sounds on the surface as it would be fine.
So Jeanne, with the career services that you offer, I understand that it's open to any business that might want an internship. Is your pool of students the USM, or is it the entire UMaine system, or where do you draw your interns from?
The US, our first and foremost is to serve our USM students. We do have a network of our career service directors and managers throughout all of our 7 campuses. They meet on a bi-weekly basis and they share information, events, best practices so that the word gets out into the system, but each campus actually has their own processes and their own way that they promote their internship opportunities to their students. Ours is on our same as our job board, so we list them right there for our students. Yes.
Okay. How about another question, Strawberry?
We're looking to have our summer interns work virtually this year. What advice do you have for the best virtual experience?
I can tackle that one. Oh no, Lillian, you go first. You experienced firsthand account.
I would say to try to connect with them, whether Zoom or Teams, as much as possible, whether it be like a daily morning check-in or a daily evening check-in. That's always helpful, just because I remember the first couple of weeks, I was a little flustered just because I didn't feel like I was doing enough. And I wasn't the only one who shared that. Many others also felt, but the fact that we had like daily check-ins with our supervisors was very helpful, and like reassuring that, no, you're fine, like do what you can. And definitely doing those virtual escape rooms. We did a couple of those. Those were fun. You would think it's not as fun as in person, but it was great. So definitely do those. Try to do any like virtual games or anything, you know, still try to interact and make sure everyone's like interacting with one another. Those are definitely really helpful.
And Kaylyn?
She hit the nail on the head. I think the only other thing that I would add is thinking about how are you going to onboard the interns virtually into the organization, because they're not going to have that benefit of being in the office and being able to kind of pick up the vibe or pick up on mannerisms or learn about the company in that more informal, organic way. Virtually, you do have to be a little bit more intentional about helping them learn the business and learn the nuances of how your organization works.
And I can just add a little something there, sort of an unintended consequence of our intern program having to go remote last year is that within the newsroom, there's a meeting at 9:30 in the morning and again at 3 o'clock in the afternoon of all the senior editors. And that's in the morning, it's here are the stories we're working on, here are the ones we think are going to be the strongest. And then at 3, you assess what the stories are and you talk about what's going to anchor the homepage, what will be the front page stories. And for an intern, they were always, when we were in the newsroom, they were always invited to attend those meetings. But I think it may have been a little intimidating for a college student to walk in and there's like 12 or 15 senior editors sitting around a conference table debating these things. But it's easy to join via Zoom. And so I think that we probably got more interest from our interns in that process of assessing the strength of news stories and the appropriate approaches and presentations because we were doing it remotely than when we were within the newsroom. So there can be advantages. Next question, Strawberry.
Panelists have mentioned the connection between students' academic life and internship experiences. Can you speak about the role that internships play in developing academic to career pathways that help to retain talent in the state of Maine?
I can give some thoughts to that from our side. Like Carol mentioned in my introduction, one of my core responsibilities is our strategic partnerships with colleges and universities. And I think in that realm, the onus is on the business to learn about what the students are learning in the classrooms so that you can create those connections within the internship experience itself. And I think that being on the campus, talking to the students, talking to the folks who work in the career centers, you can connect with faculty, anything that you can do to understand what they're learning in the classroom, then just better prepares you to be able to kind of tease those connections out for the students. You don't necessarily have to spell it out for them. They'll make those connections themselves, but being aware of what their academic life actually consists of. And that if you're not in a position to visit the colleges, you don't have the capacity to build those relationships, I think having those conversations with the intern when they start can really just kind of help position the internship experience as experiential learning, because then the intern will know, oh, hey, this person actually wants to know what I learned in my class and is it relevant to this project they've put me on. So just being intentional about weaving that in and doing some learning on your own too.
Oh, that's all really good advice, I think. Next question, Strawberry.
This is a question for Kaylyn. Are there different tactics that you use for intern selection from those that are used in permanent position selection? What are the indicators of success to screen for an intern?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think I'll kind of give two answers. When we're hiring specifically for interns, like I mentioned, we do the job description the same way we do for full-time roles. And so we know, and we equip our early career recruiters to be able to screen for the roles, to know what, skill sets or prior experiences the manager's looking for. Obviously, those are, within the realm of reality for a college student or a grad student. But I think the caveat there is that you need to know if the intern is going to be able to come in and take ownership over their learning. And I think that's the biggest distinction, is being able to screen for that, because we can provide a great experience. We can tee up a number of really exciting projects. But if the intern isn't in a position yet to really feel like they're ready to take ownership over the responsibility that we're giving them, that sometimes is a key indicator that, okay, maybe they're not yet ready for this role. We want someone who's ready to jump in and take that ownership. And I think the second part was about screening for people who might be ready to transition into full-time roles. And I think that just depends on how you do your usual job screening and job selection. We use the same process for interns. I would recommend not really doing anything different, because your selection criteria and your selection process, if it's working for your full-time hires, it should work for your interns too. Just being cognizant of how the experience might be a little different.
Great. How about another question, Strawberry?
Does anyone take students on international F1 visas?
I feel like I'm giving a lot of answers, but we do. That's something that college students who are under those different types of visas will ask at a career fair. They're really well informed about what their obligations are. And so we do sponsorship for OPT and CPT. We were, cognizant of what that would mean for us as an employer. It's a big thing too, and Jeanne, you might have thoughts on this, like when we go to career fairs, we'll be able to check off, yes, we sponsor, no, we don't, because it's really important for those students to know which employers are in a position to do that.
Right, and again, I think our team can help make those connections as well. We try to get the word out on what the opportunities are, what companies are sponsors, and then try to help with the matching. So, but yeah, that's spot on, Kaylyn.
And if you have a student with that sort of a visa, does it complicate paying them, or is that okay?
Yeah, it's just a matter of coordinating the process. Usually there's, whatever institution they're attending, there's forms and things that you have to fill out with them. The colleges and universities are always well positioned to support the employer with that. And then the students, honestly, international students know that inside and out. They know what they know how they have to go about doing it. So I think it's just, the learning has to happen on the employer side to know what you need to be able to do to support that international student. But yes, we pay our international interns the same as we pay our US residents.
Great. How about another question, Strawberry?
I just saw this one come through. Our company often has temporary positions available, part-time and full-time, that may lead to full-time permanent positions. We don't have a formal internship program. Do you feel we could find candidates if we indicated it was an internship position instead of a temp position? We're located in Central Maine, and filling positions has been difficult. We can pay well and would be happy if students also received college credit.
Any advice?
I used to tackle that a lot. That came up a lot when I was commissioner, because people wanted to know, is it ethical? Is it, I really do want to have a pipeline for my full-time and part-time positions. I would definitely advocate for exploration around that. And I think, the employer guide can maybe help you answer some of those questions on whether you want to use temp positions and turn them into internships, or maybe a combination thereof. But I think the intricacies of really what is the difference between a temp position and an internship, and I think that's where you'll find some guidance through our team at the Career and Employment Hub at USM.
So much of these, I think, are, they're just really specific to the business, and so it's good that there are resources out there. Absolutely. Another question, Strawberry?
How can internships help students develop their professional network in the state of Maine?
Well, if I can say, you just meet so many different people within a business, like people you wouldn't even think of meeting, even other fellow interns. So those connections really help, whether big or small. You just never know when down the line it's going to help you. So like for my current position at WGME, I was able to network with someone. It wasn't through an internship that I met them, but I actually had met them through a friend, and I hadn't spoken to them in a couple of years, but just messaging them and just like asking them questions like, hey, remember we met so and so here. Just like those small interactions and those like the networking really is super helpful. And big or small, you never know what can happen. You never know if it can help you to your next step that eventually could lead you to that full-time job that you're looking to get, or that internship that you might think like, oh no, I'm not qualified for it, but you just never know. So like network.
Yeah, I think that's the business lifeblood in this state is networking. I know that we had an intern from UNH work with us last summer, and she did a really great job. And because the Press Herald is part of a network of other publications in the state, she was able to land a full-time job at one of our sister publications. And so I think that, any kind of, if you're bringing in an intern, one of the most valuable things you can do is expose them to a lot of people within your organization and the culture of your organization and what real life work experience is like. And from that, I think network opportunities will spring. So we're getting close to almost being out of time, but let's see if we can get one more question in there, Strawberry.
All right, this one is for Kaylyn. Have you documented and or shared your learning about overcoming barriers to internship? This seems like something that could be supported on a statewide level.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I would answer it with another question. Is there anyone who's interested in collaborating or having these conversations after this panel? Because I think you hit the nail on the head, right? There are things that we've learned as a business in the years that we've been doing the internship. And we know that for us as an employer in Maine, it's important for there to be a strong workforce. And so what we've done and had success with is not something that we're going to keep under wraps, right? If there's strategies that we can share, I'm down to share them with who's ever interested. And I know for us in developing our program, we've been able to develop a successful program because of the network of folks who are doing this kind of work across the state, that all of the different folks who are involved in executing and planning our program have been able to connect with. So I think these kinds of conversations, I mean, I know what we've done. I'm happy to capture it and share it. And I know of a lot of other companies across the state who have done really innovative things to support their own interns. So that's probably a good collaboration that might come out of this conversation.
I don't know, Kaylyn, maybe there's a desk at the USM Hub Center there for WEX in the upcoming design layouts there. So
yes,
yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. And I just want to say thank you to Carol and the Portland Press for putting this type of a program on. And I think we can go deeper and wider and broader. And I think it is really something that we should continue discussions with. There's a lot of partners at the table, and everybody has some really valuable tools that we can help our workforce with.
Thank you. And so just so people know, we do record, obviously we record our Making It Work sessions. We will post this on our landing page after the event, and it will have also the URLs and the links to the other resources that some of our panelists were talking about today. So I think it would be great to continue these connections and to keep this conversation going. If we were doing this in our traditional place, which is the Portland Public Library, this is the part where there would be thunderous applause as we thank the panelists for joining us today. So just imagine you're hearing that right now, because it was a wonderful conversation, and I really appreciate all of you joining us today. So thank you to the audience, thank you to our sponsors, but most especially thank you to the panelists. I really appreciate your expertise and your insight on this issue, and I'm sure we'll be chatting again. So thank you.
Thank you.